Good evening. We're back for another chapter of Cruise with Colin. What's happened so far? Colin's booked his cruise. Deirdre's lusting after a coked up and very scared milkman. Deirdre's husband Gerry is still fiddling with his locomotive, and her friend June is just hanging around the place. Yes, of course, Gerry and his lovely wife are trying to get jobs on board. On board the cruise ship, a cruise ship. So yeah. Anyway, so there we are. So we're back to Gerry, the slightly lemony cabaret organizer, party organizer, entertainment officer, and this chapter, in hilarious punnage, is called Gerry and the Pacemaker. So, Gerry, you've been taking some time out from the industry. Russ Abbott, continuing in his Boston-esque Lloyd Grossman drawl, looked Gerry up and down, then up again, because he was a perfectionist. And mostly, he liked what he saw. Okay, so Gerry's glory days might be slightly faded. His days of Cossack dancing around the aft deck and pool, some way aft of him. But there was no mistake in the man's natural charisma. This was a man who could lead a crack team of junior entertainment officers, corral them, tame their youthful, drain-aboard stomach arrogance, keep the young whippersnappers in order, and school them in the dark arts of deck quoits or leading a sing-along of Rod Stewart's We Are Sailing. Under Gerry's tutelage, EWC's most junior prospects would become experts in charming even the most awkward passenger. Gerry did smell ever slightly of lemons, though, which was a bit disconcerting, and odds with the man's otherwise uber-masculine character. That's right, Russ, replied Gerry, totally unaware of the scrutiny to which he and his citrusy aura were currently being subjected. I've been waiting for something really exciting to come along. From there, the meeting progressed at an accelerated pace. Formalities out of the way, Gerry and Russ hit it off immediately. Within the hour they were drinking mocktails, Gerry still feeling the effects of the night before, and Russ still feeling tipsy from the morning before, and discussing their shared love of Michael Heseltine's speeches and the Antiques Roadshow. They bypassed the usual wrangling over duties and salaries, each deferring to the other's diplomatic suggestions, and by the time Gerry began the short walk back to the Hilton, where he knew Sue would be waiting for him, ready with either champagne or gin, depending on how the interview had gone, evening was falling, and an uncharacteristic but suitably enchanting mist was making its lazy passage from its source amongst the host Solent to Southampton's once proud city walls, which it enveloped before sweeping on towards the modern town centre. A ship's horn sounded portentously in the distance as Gerry threaded the pedestrianised and gradually misting streets of Southampton city centre. He strode through the reception of the Hilton Hotel as a conquering hero. Sue looked up from her glass. She'd been waiting nervously in the Chalmers Hotel bar for a man to return, and now he'd done so. It was obvious from Gerry's face and the mocktail stains on his John Lewis shirts, £3 for £200 a bargain, that his news was good. Nothing can stop us now, he announced to the reception staff in general, whilst dabbing at a particularly stubborn Coca-Cola stain, and worrying at the back of his mind that maybe he should have mentioned his heart condition to Russ, the pacemaker. The operation had been 6 years ago, and had been the reason Gerry had left his previous job, which he'd spent his professional life in search of. People really didn't understand how stressful the job was, and as a fresh young cruise dancer on board the old P&O ship Canberra in the 1980s, Gerry would never have suspected what trials and tribulations his cruising future would hold. As he reached career maturity, it became more and more difficult to be cheerful all the time, to remember people's names and come up with original jokes with a seafaring theme every morning. Then the scare had come on a particularly muggy afternoon whilst docked in Tangiers. Not the best place for healthcare. Just put that in there. Gerry, morning duties completed, had taken a dip in the pool. While the majority of passengers were off sightseeing, God knows why, Tangiers is just a poor man's Marrakesh, laden with all the dangers of the Casbah that the brochures strategically leave out. Gerry front crawled his usual 50 lengths, although the pool was only 15 metres long, so let's not exaggerate its level of ability, and then settled down to the task of relaxing in the hot tub, sliding back into oblivion under the bubbling water as it nibbled at the southernmost reaches of his rosy cheeks and splashed languorously amongst his nasal hairs. Gerry didn't remember sliding under the water. Surely his eyes had been closed for just a few seconds. He sunk gratefully into the well-earned peace that his North African outpost had afforded him. They say that dying is just like falling asleep. Well, yes, up to a point. For Gerry, up to a point was when the sudden electrifying pain came largely through his nipples, as the ship's doctor, his maniacal grin bearing down on the stricken entertainment officer, once again applied the paddles of the defibrillator to his chest. It had been like the time he tried on nipple clamps after mistakenly walking into the notorious Exchange Bar during a New Year's Eve night out in Bournemouth. Only, if you're being pedantic, probably less socially embarrassing. Halogen luminosity filled his whole vision, as his aching eyes creased and cringed from the agonising whiteness. In his confused state, Gerry caught snippets of conversation. Okay, he's back with us. A female voice this time. Gerry thought he heard the sound of scattered items being tidied away, cases being snapped shut, and people gradually leaving the green fringed cubicle in which he lay. That's about all he could be sure of. He was in a hospital bed surrounded by standard NHS issued green curtains. Either that or he was lying on a snooker table. Beyond this realm of happy confusion, other voices filled the void. They didn't matter, though. Not right now. No, go on. Just let me have one more go. Gerry tried to wave his hands in protest as the excitedly camp voice he recognised as the nasal pleasing tones of the ship's doctor. He'd always been a bit too keen. A far more assertive voice, Gerry responded forcefully. The female again. I told you he's stable, Mr. Coombs. Leave the paddles alone. Later it had become clear that Gerry had suffered a minor heart attack, probably caused by stress, heat and exhaustion. And, of course, 3 months of multi-course meals a day. He'd been told to take it easy from now on, to put his feet up for a few months. And for anyone who's interested, tonight's tipple is the Ned. Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. Very nice. £9.50 in Tesco. Home of otherwise shit wine. Although the Graham Norton Sauvignon Blanc's pretty good as well, actually. Surprisingly. Anyway. It was upon his early and unexpected return home that he found his wife in bed with Mr. Furnish, Gerry's dentist. What a bastard. For more than 3 decades. He hadn't been a bastard for more than 3 decades. He'd been dead. Well, he might have been a bastard for more than 3 decades, I don't know. But dentistry, that was the main 30 years. Yes, anyway, found his wife in bed with Mr. Furnish, Gerry's dentist, more than 3 years, complete with naughty schoolgirl outfit. That's Gerry's wife, not Mr. Furnish. He was dressed as a priest. Inconsistent. An immediate and far from life-threatening cardiac arrest had ensued. It was, unoriginally, all a bit of a blur. The ambulance screaming through town, being rushed through corridors, strapped to an 18-inch wide stretcher, like a recaptured mental patient. Medical staff just out of university, using complicated words which nobody understands, and asking what the prognosis was. The whole cheesy emergency room shebang. Later, recovering in hospital, Gerry found solace in nature. Well, not exactly your actual nature exactly, but the best the hospital could do. Staring at stuff mainly, just staring. That was Gerry's pastime of choice, staring. Either through his fingerprint-smudged anti-suicide window, which offered what an estate agent might describe as unfettered views of the car park, or through the ajar door of his private room into the lobby where hospital porters conducted their grumpy trade. But whether watching the cars come and go through the rising and falling black and yellow striped barrier, or rubbernecking at the trolleys being rushed through the security doors of the cardiac ward, Gerry found he could pass the hours of boredom pretty unresentfully. It was just good old-fashioned people watching, and Gerry was a people person. The police officers, who seemed to frequent the hospital with some degree of regularity, were the most entertaining. They would hang around, presumably on double time, waiting for a witness to awake from a coma or for a bank robber to cark it, messing around with operating equipment or pushing each other around in wheelchair races until somebody offered them breakfast. Other times they would engage in hushed conversations on the crackling police radios, during which Gerry could hear them claiming not to be able to attend the shoplifter at Boots as they were all tied up with paperwork, and not actually hang around A&E chatting up the nurses. On one occasion he spent a happy 10 minutes watching two policemen having a competition to see who could stand on one leg the longest. This competitive pursuit ended badly when the fatter of the two highly trained law enforcement operatives overbalanced and fell backwards onto a power switch, immediately blacking out the entire ward and causing at least one injection to be misdirected. The two red-faced and giggling constables were quickly whisked away in the direction of the hospital canteen for a second breakfast.